Okay, I'm gonna get my glasses.
All right, so we are now studying. For those who can hear the recording later, we're starting the book of Ezekiel. It's going to cover from exile all the way into the return back to the land, which is in chapter 47. The first couple of chapters are kind of the setting of why Ezekiel's there. So I want to kind of get into that, get a little background on Ezekiel. The prophet Ezekiel was raised in a priestly family. So he's a descendant of Aaron. Very good chance he's probably a descendant of Eleazar. So he would be, related to the Zadoks. So this really applies to him when he starts talking about the Zadoks, priest in 44, 45. What happened at the time is the Babylonians had taken over with the 10 tribes, had taken over a few years prior, taken over the Assyrian Empire, and they destroyed them. And so they had divided the empire up in three. The Medes had everything east of the let me just show you that. I'm going to share a screen here. Let's go to, where is it? It's difficult to find this stuff. Oh, good grief. Hang on. Let me get rid of some stuff I got popping up on my screen. Okay, so let me try to do this right here. Sorry, guys. It's when you share a screen, it doesn't always come the way you want it. Okay. Okay, so guys, can you see this at all?
Well, black now, but
No, all it says sharing. I don't know. Oh, there you go.
There we go.
ah, cool.
Okay, so let me just kind of get you like a little, see what you're looking at here. It's going to go, the Tigris River is over here, okay? And Mosul is here. Modern day Mosul is right here. And why that's important, because Nineveh is just north of that, okay?
Yeah.
So if you take Mosul and you draw a line to the west, all the way over to where the Euphrates River is, that whole area, that's the Assyrian province. So when you go back and look at the story of Nimrod, they built all these cities. The cities in the north are these ones right here, and the cities in the south would eventually become Babylonians. The Babylonians were a province of the Assyrian Empire, and then they flipped it, and the Babylonians ended up taking control over all of this. Now, this little area right here, you see this where it says Hasaka?
Hasaka. Yeah.
That place is still there today, and that's where the Kurds live, the Syrian Kurds, and the Americans have a base right here, right today, this very day. The British had bases there, the French had bases there, but in this area right here, this is where the bulk of the 10 tribes were taken into exile. And there's this highway here is actually a river, dried up today, but there's a river that runs up here, okay, to this area here of Hasaka. Sorry, and it is a tributary off of the Euphrates River, which is right here. You see that? So the actual, you see this green area? That's the Euphrates Valley. So they brought the 10 tribes when they brought, let me move this over here a little bit, move this out of the way here. When the 10 tribes, I'm gonna make this a little smaller. Can you see down here? I'm gonna go a little smaller. There we go. All right. So when they took the 10 tribes into exile, they took them all the way to this area over here. These are the cities of the Medes. You guys know that from scripture, right?
Each.
Okay. And I'm trying to give you context because it's hard to understand what they're talking about unless you know the terrain. These are the cities of the Medes. Okay. Lake Van, there is the Urartu, or the modern day Slavic people. They were the natural enemies to them. So this was a barrier. So when the Assyrians placed the Israelites in this as a screening force to protect them from their northern enemy. Okay. If you look right here, you see where Baghdad is, and you see the Persian Gulf. So you kind of get an idea of where what we're talking about.
Wow.
Okay. All right. Now let's stop sharing this. I'm going to show you something else. Okay. So we're going to share something else. And go back here. There we go. Takes a little while. This doesn't go very fast, does it? Uh-oh. What did I do? Oh, it's loading the screen. Sorry. Okay. It's not what I wanted. This again. Let's go back.
That's
This
a
is what I
beautiful
want.
background.
All right. I'm sorry. I should be better at this.
Yeah, you should.
Okay. Can you see this? Okay.
Yes,
So
you're
this
in
is
media.
kind of a,
Yeah,
so
we can see it.
now this is an important picture because the cities of the Medes are over here below the Caspian Sea. And this was modern day Mosul. I just showed you along the Tigris River, right? This is where the Assyrians had their major cities. Okay. And here, this area here is Hasaka province. And this river here feeds right the Euphrates. I just showed you the Euphrates River. So he was placed somewhere along this river here that goes up to Hasaka. And when you go and read the scriptures that talk about the exile, which are, they were taken into exile to the cities of the Medes, to Gozan, to Khabar. It's referring to this area here, okay? The Babylonians took over the Assyrian Empire, so they owned all of this. And that's where we are today. So when you read about it, so they estimate that Ezekiel was either taken in the 605 BC. Let me stop sharing this. He was either taken in the 605 BC exile or the 597 BC exile. Everything I've read is the 605, which is the first exile. And they took a lot of Judeans and all the people in the northern cities that had taken refuge of the 10 tribes were taken up to this area. This is the first place of exile. The second time they would take them into the heart of Babylon, near the city of modern day Baghdad. And then the final one would come in 587. But in this situation, he was taken into the heart of where most of the 10 tribes had been exiled and basically had set up a country. Okay. For all intents and purposes, they already had set up, they ran and controlled their own country. All right, so let's get back to the scripture itself. Okay. All right. There's some things as we go through there are pretty amazing. And the setting on this, mom just said when she was in high school, they used to, when they read the first time they read it, they immediately identified this as kind of he's talking about a UFO. So anybody who knows this and reads this or has read this knows that this is a very unique conversation that's taking place. But when you start reading the details, it's going to create a lot of images, and a lot of them are going to be like things that we see on the newspapers today. All right, so let's start. Betty, will you start in the chapter 1 through 3? Start off with the introduction.
Okay. Now it came about in the 30th year on the 5th day of the 4th month, while I was by the river Kabar among the exiles, the heavens were opened and I saw visions of God. And this next verse too is in parentheses. On the 5th of the month, in the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's exile, the word of the Lord came expressly to Ezekiel the priest, son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Kabar, and there the hand of the Lord came upon him.
Okay. One of the reasons why it's in parentheses,
Yeah.
because he's given Babylonian dates, and then he gives Southern Kingdom dates. Okay. So because remember, a lot of the audience is going to be Jews, and so he's going to have to give them a context of it. For the 10 tribes, they're going to go off the Babylonian dates of when they were captured, when the Babylonians took over and the setting of Nebuchadnezzar's throne. They're going to go off of that. because they're under the thumb of Nebuchadnezzar. But for the Jews, they're going to have to go. They're referring back to Jehoiakim, because that was who was king when Mr. Sanabuzi went into exile.
So you're saying, okay, when he says, on the 5th day of the 4th month, in the first chapter, first verse, and then he says, on the 5th of the month in the 5th year. What are we talking about there? Is that?
So in the 5th year of the exile of King Jehoiakim, okay, so it's kind of giving context to when this happened, because
Oh, okay.
Jews are going to reference his throne and when he was in power, and they're going to have context of that because they don't know about the Babylonians other than them being dragged up into this fish net. Okay, so if you want to know a little bit about how horrible these exiles were, literally the Babylonians used auxiliary troops to do all the dirty work. Esau, the Edomites, were their primary source of forced labor. They were running the trains. And so many Jews, and before that, the 10 tribes, when they were taken, it was harsh because Esau has no love for either one of them. And so they did whatever they wanted to and took whatever they could above and beyond what the initial the Assyrian exile, and then later the Babylonian exile, they did whatever they want. They took advantage of a situation. They weren't the only ones involved in it as auxiliary troops, but they were one of the primary brutal forces behind it. So when you read in scripture that they took pregnant women and they cut them open and threw their babies on the rocks, most of that is done by Esau. A lot of that's done by them because they were doing the dirty work for the Babylonians in this situation. So if you survived the 550-mile trek north from Jerusalem north, if you survived it, you're a tough person because it was harsh. Okay, Matt, will you read verse 4 through 14? I want to keep continuity on this one.
Verse 4. It
Verse
says,
4, yeah.
I looked, and behold, a storm wind came from the north, a great cloud with flashing fire and brightness all around it, and something like a glowing alloy out of the fire. From within it came the likeness of 4 living creatures. This was their appearance. They had a likeness of a human, but each one had 4 faces, and each one of them had 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and the soles of their feet were like the hoof of a calf. They sparkled like the color of burnished bronze. They had human hands under their wings on their 4 sides. The 4 of them had faces and wings. Their wings touched one another. They did not turn when they moved. Each could move in the direction of any of its faces. As for the form of their faces, each had a human face. The 4 had the face of a lion on the right side. The 4 had the face of an ox on the left side. And the 4 had the face of an eagle. Such were their faces. Their wings were spread out above. Each creature had 2 wings touching the wing of another, while another 2 were covering their bodies. Now each being could move in the direction of any of its faces. Wherever the Ruach would go, they went without turning as they went. As for the form of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, resembling torches, moving between the living creatures. There was brightness to the fire, and lightning went forth from the fire. The living creatures were running back and forth like flashes of lightning. Oh, should I keep going?
Stop right there. Okay, so we got this packed. I want to just kind of describe something here to you.
Do they have any pictures of these creatures?
They did, but it's terrible.
Well, terrible's better than nothing, maybe. I don't know.
No, they're just. It would be nice to have a really good. I'm going to read something from 1 Samuel chapter 4, verse 1. Okay. And the word of Samuel came to all Israel. Now Israel went out to battle against the Philistines. They encamped at Ebenezer, and the Philistines encamped at Aphek. And the Philistines drew up a line against Israel. And when the battle spread, Israel was defeated before the Philistines, who killed about 400,000 men on the field of battle. And when the people came to the camp, the elders of Israel said, why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord here from Shiloh, that it may come among us and save us from the power of our enemies. So the people sent to Shiloh and brought from there the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts. Notice it says the ark of the covenant of the captain of armies. Okay, that's an important statement on putting that phrase together. Who is enthroned on the cherubim. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. As soon as the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into camp, all Israel gave a mighty shout, so the earth resounded. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shouting, they said, what does this great shouting in the camp of the Hebrews mean? And when they learned that the ark of the Lord had come into camp, the Philistines were afraid, for they said, God has come into the camp. And they said, woe to us, for nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us. Who could deliver us from the power of these mighty gods? These are the gods who struck the Egyptians with every sort of plague in the wilderness. Take courage, O men and be men, O Philistines, lest you become slaves to the Hebrews, as they have been to you. Be men and fight. Okay, so let's stop right there. So we got phrases in this thing. We got Ark of Covenant. We got cherubims. We got a God coming into the camp. Okay, and they're going to battle. We got the phrase that says the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of Hosts, or the captain of the army. So in that, you've got a phrase of something. So when you go back into what Matt just read, and he's reading about these four creatures, what creatures is he actually reading about?
Those are cherubim.
Yeah, how do you know, other than a description, how do you know that?
Because they are a part of his war. They go with the oh goodness, what is it called? They go with the Ark of the Covenant. They're bound to it.
Yeah, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. Just a second. Let me do a
Well, it says their wings were spread out above, each had two touching another being and two covering the bodies. Don't we see that with on the Ark of the Covenant? Aren't the wings touching?
Yes, they do. All right, so I'm looking at chapter 3 of Ezekiel. I'm looking for it says he actually calls them cherubs, but I can't find it now. It drives me crazy when you
In chapter 3?
Yeah, in chapter 3, it says in verse 12, then the Spirit lifted me up. I heard behind me the voice of a great earthquake, and it goes on and on and on. He goes on to say, and I came to the exiles of Tel Aviv who were dwelling by the Chariot River, and I sat there dwelling 7 days. Okay. So in this chapter, he actually refers it to as cherubs. So he's telling us what they are. So what is the difference in Isaiah 6 from the guardians of the throne in Isaiah 6 to the guardians here in Ezekiel 1 in chapter 3? What are the difference of the two angelic beings?
Isn't one well, it says here for war, which is a difference as opposed to serving in the temple in time of peace and the king just ruling, correct?
Yeah, you're onto something. All right. So in the heavenly realm, the seraphim were used for the throne itself among the rocks of fire. So they would serve as the guardians of the heavenly realm. On the mobile throne, which is what we're talking about here, we got cherubs being used in the mobile throne. Okay. So that's why the Ark of the Covenant, what we read in 1 Samuel chapter 4, it's a mobile throne going to war, as he's alluding to here, Rogers. And so the mobile throne will be, the guardians of that throne will be cherubs as opposed to seraphim, and the seraphim are the guardians in the heavenly realm at the fixed throne. So because the earth is separated from the heavenly realm, the seraphim won't come down until the 8th day. Their habitation will be in the heavenly realm, but on the 8th day, the two will come together as one. The four living creatures will take a capacity that's joint, where you've got, you know, the Father and the Son coming together. Okay.
Okay,
any-
wait a minute, Robert. I lost my thought. The cherubims come down out of heaven.
The
On
No,
the
the
day,
cherubs do. The cherubim will.
cherubim.
the cherubims come down. And the seraphims go back and forth. They go back and forth already. Is that what you're
No,
saying?
the seraphims, when we read in context, there's only time they're mentioned is in Isaiah 6, and they're in the throne room of God in Isaiah 6.
Oh,
So we know, and it's specifically in the heavenly throne room, the seraphim are operating as the guardians there. Now, we do know that Satan or Lucifer was a cherubim, and he walked among the stones, right? But he was mobile. He would go to and fro. So he wasn't just positioned there, where the seraphim have a very specific, and if you look at the temple today, they're priests that are guards. And those priests, that's all they do. They guard the temple, they guard the gates. They don't move any other place. And so the seraphims are guardians of that heavenly realm, where these cherubims are more mobile. Okay.
okay.
All right, now what is something about this description of these that I mean, obviously there's more than just one thing, but I want to just kind of discuss what are some of the things that just catch your attention about these cherubs?
Lightning, clouds, 4 faces, 4 heads.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, obviously unique stuff, but what's something that really jumps out at you?
That jumps out.
They had human hands.
Yeah, that caught me too, the human hand.
Yeah, under their
And
wing.
human faces too.
Yeah.
Well, how can they have human faces and eagle faces? That was my question. I think he said they had both.
Yeah, so the
They had
human
like
face
the-
would face here, but the eagle would be behind. And then to the right would be the lion, and the bull or the ox would be to the left. So you had these 4 faces on this round, on the shoulders of this creature, you had these 4 faces. And so if you were looking from one direction, you would catch the eagle. You look for another, you catch the lion or the human face. But when they were moving forward, they moved and you would see the human face. And it says they always moved in the same way. So so the human face was the one that directed toward Ezekiel, but he could see the other faces, but the human face was one that was directed.
So
Another thing,
I always thought it was 4 different faces. You're saying it's one face with a different,
Sides.
one head with 4
One
different.
head.
yeah, one head with 4 faces.
Oh, okay. That
This
makes
is the
more
living.
sense.
Now, one of the things, read verse 14 again. Read verse 14 again, Matt.
Says, the living creatures were running back and forth like flashes of lightning.
All right. One of the descriptions of UFOs, what's one of the descriptions when they talk about UFOs? Is they
They're-
dart back and forth.
They're very erratic. They can go back and forth.
Right. And this caught my attention. So, you know, a lot of we're going to see these things. Everybody here on this call are going to be starting to see these things in great numbers. It's going to be, and some of this stuff is going to be the enemy, because the fallen angels took the technology with them too, right? And they use the technology to go to and fro. But so does God's kingdom. He uses the technology, whatever it is that's being used here. We're going to get more into it. As we read the next paragraph, we're going to notice a little bit about the technology. Raj, will you read 15 through 21?
Yes, sir. Now as I looked at the living creature, I saw the wheel on the earth beside the living creature, one of each of our 4 of the 4 of them. As for the appearance of the wheel, their construction, their appearance was like a gleam of beryl, and the 4 had the same likeness. Their appearance and construction began as it were a wheel within a wheel.
Stop right there.
So like a gyro,
So
wheel within a wheel.
Yeah. So when did gyroscopes first get invented? Where do we first get the use of
The
gyroscopes?
Greeks,
They did?
right?
I don't
I
know.
think it was the
thought
Greeks.
I thought it was in the 20th century was the first time the use of a gyroscope was used. Anybody, I mean, and I would be curious about this, but the idea of a gyroscope is now used in so many different, my brother-in-law who helped design missiles, they would use a gyroscope in the head of a missile to guide it. So here we find a gyroscope is guiding this this metal-like burning structure that's flying to and fro, and there's a gyroscope in it, which I find super interesting. You know, for a person who's very scientific and analytical, this chapter to me brings a lot of interesting things for a person who has that analytical ability, because there's a lot in here. And for an engineer or a scientist, it'd be interesting for them to read it and start, you know, breaking it down for us, because we read it and we see, oh, we see the sparkle and less the engineering, right? I mean, when I read, I see, I mean, what's the first thing that Rod said? All the lightning that's coming from it is the first thing that caught his eye, right? But an engineer would break it down and see the construction of this mobile throne. All right, keep going.
When they went in any of the four directions without turning as they went, and their rims were tall and awesome, and their rims all four were full of eyes all around.
Stop
And
there. Stop right there.
sounds like a tank.
All right, well, it kind of sounds like a yes, but where do we find the eyes all around found in scripture? Does anybody know?
Find the what? The eyes?
The eyes in a wheel. Eyes in a wheel. Where do we find the eyes in a wheel?
Oh, that's
I'm gonna
oh
guess
goodness.
Revelation.
Yeah, I think it's the eyes in the wheel. You go look for that. I can't write today.
While you're looking for that, I'm going to mention his name is Chuck, Dr. Chuck, Messer. He has some real interesting comments on this sort of thing, and he's talking about UFOs. He preaches on Genesis. I got it when I was studying Genesis with him. But he's dead now. He lived back in the 1900s, later part. But it's really worth reading what he says. The research and the hiding of some of these things that was going on during that time. So if you're interested, I'll try to send out a link when I find it's called Extraterrestrial or something like that.
Somebody go to Revelations 4:6-8.
Six through eight.
Before the throne was something like a sea of glass, like crystal. Want me to continue?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
That's it.
go ahead.
And it's like a sea of glass, like crystal. And in the middle of the throne and around it were four living creatures full of eyes in front and behind.
There you go. That's right. All right, so we have a confirmation. We have two witnesses, John and Ezekiel, to these eyes. So I would ask the question before Raj, because I'm going to unpack your portion more than anything else. What is the purpose of the eyes?
See everything.
Okay, what else?
I'd say the same thing. At all the same time, they're watching out for the throne, so they have to be able to know what's out there to see.
So
And see which direction to move.
Well, in the Revelation, it talks about the seven spirits of God, right? Going out, you know, and I connect here between those seven spirits and the eyes that are in here. It's the purpose of these eyes are to be the eyes and ears. The mobile throne is going out. It's to be the eyes and ears of the throne room in heaven, in the heavenly realm. And so as you see these things go out, as you witness it, these eyes are recording. Look, I sell body worn cameras, right? And when a policeman goes out into a situation, he hits a button and that body worn camera, the eye of the camera begins to record. So as I'm reading this and I'm thinking about the eyes in this wheel, I'm thinking it's a body worn camera. God has put on his mobile throne a camera. It's like it's recording everything that's taking place. And now maybe I'm being very human simplistic on this, but to me, the purpose of telling us it's got eyes in it is the same reason why you would be tell somebody you have eyes on something. I have eyes on it. That's a terminology that we use. So if God is putting his eyes on it by using this mobile throne, okay?
You're talking about the eyes being like mobile, like the waves, the pattern waves of sound?
I don't know. Well, first of all, I have no idea of the technology, but God is using terminology for us to understand, or Ezekiel is using this, right? So the purpose of an eye is to see and record, right? And so by putting these eyes or cameras or whatever they are in the wheel of this UFO, it's recording, it's telling a story back to the one who sent them out, right?
Okay, it's like a visual recording to remember, a memory thing.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, exactly. All right, go, Raj, go ahead. What verse are you on?
19. And when the living creature went, the wheels went beside them. And when the living creature rose from the earth, the wheels rose. When the spirit went to go, they went. And when the wheels rose along with them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheel. When those went, these went. When those stood, these stood. And when those rose from the earth, the wheels rose along with them. For the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels.
Okay, all right. Why is Ezekiel telling us this?
And then he creatures went. I don't know. I got his hands, eyes all over.
They're servants to the living creature. They do his bidding and his will.
Okay, all right, keep going. But why is he telling us that when something is, he says, when this does it, then this does it. And when this does it, this does it. When this does it, this does it. Why is he telling us that way?
On earth as it is in heaven.
No. You're kind of, be simplistic about it, right? Go back
They're
to
attached.
this. They're attached. They're attached. Okay.
They're like wheels on a car. Then.
Yeah, they're attached. They're very good. They're very good. Okay. That's the best way. Anybody else have any other comments about that? But so why would Ezekiel want to make sure that we knew something was attached?
Because we are not able.
Yeah, go on.
We're not able to see the presence of God, correct?
Well, I
Okay.
think for him, I mean, living in the society where he was at, this is something just way out there. Today, we might have a better understanding if we saw something like that.
All right, before I go, I'm going to show you something, and then you'll kind of understand what I'm getting at here. Let's go.
I mean, a car has wheels, and where the car goes, the wheels go. You know, that's really simple, you know, but it's all one, they're all together, they're all one part, like Raj said, they're attached, they all work together.
It may look like they're not attached, but they are. It's one I would think he would say something like that.
No, David said that they may look like they're not attached, but they are attached.
Okay, let me share screen with you. Okay.
Would you draw a picture up real quick to show us?
No, tell me what that is. What is that?
Sphinx.
Thanks.
What is this? What is a sphinx?
It's a
It's a-
body of something with the face of a man and the
It's
Pharaoh.
a human head and the body of a lion or a
yeah.
leopard or some sort of cat.
Okay. All right, let's stop sharing that. I'm gonna give you another one. Hang on, give me a second. Okay, I'm almost there. Give me a second. Thanks for, I know this takes a little while, but sometimes I gotta show you this so you kind of get I can't always find these things real quick. So I'll just use this image here. Use that one there. Okay. All right. Now let's go to back here and let me share it. Okay. Does anybody know what you're looking at here? What are these?
Like
Those, oh, yeah.
centaurs, or what do you call them, where you have the body of an animal?
Face of a
Geez.
man and the body of an animal.
All right, so these are the same things that the Sphinx is, the same things that being described by Ezekiel. In the ancient world, these are cherubs, okay? And this is the palace of Nineveh, and they placed two major cherubs in front of their palace, okay? But it had a head of a man and a body of an animal with wings, right? The Sphinx is the same thing, it's a cherub. The idea, the first time these cherubs began to appear was, which is ironic, is was at the Tower of Babel. All right, so the idea of the ancients knew, and when as they're describing these things, the ancients knew exactly what these creatures were and the purpose of the creatures. To you and I, we go to Washington, D.C., we don't see cherubs in front of the White House, but if we did, from this discussion, you would understand the purpose of why you would have a cherub there at the White House or some type of Capitol building. Okay. Any questions on that?
Well, I wanted to mention, I put in the chat the name of this Chuck Messler. He's no longer living, but I couldn't find the one I was talking about. But he talks about these extraterrestrial beings and the vision of these unidentified objects. Has a lot about that. It's really interesting. I don't know what this one says. It's called transhumanism. So if you want to write his name down and look up something on his sermons, it's real interesting along the line we're talking about.
Okay, where are we? What verse are we right now? Oh,
22.
Paul, yeah, Paul, can you actually, Mom, will you read 22 to 25?
Okay. The shape of an
Yes.
expanse. 22, that's what mine starts with.
Yes.
Okay. The shape of an expanse.
Not really.
Let her finish.
Ezekiel.
Hers is written differently.
The
Just a
shape
minute,
of an
guys.
expanse with a gleam like an awe-inspiring crystal was spread out over the heads of the living creatures, and under the expanse their wings extended, one toward each other. Each of them also had two wings covering their bodies. When they moved, I heard the sound of their wings like a roar of mighty waters, like the voice of an almighty, and a sound of commotion like the noise of an army. When they stood still, they lowered their wings. The voice came from above and expands over their
Not
heads.
there, Mom. You read too much. Let's go just 22 through 25.
Okay, I have a question. It may be a stupid question.
25. I just started 25. You want me to start?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I jumped to go. You're okay. Go ahead and finish.
The voice came from above the expanse over their heads. When they stood still, they lowered their wings. And the next is 26.
Okay.
Okay, I
ahead.
have a question. It may be stupid. Okay, we've got these a face of a man, a face of what was it, the face of an eagle?
Eagle,
Yeah, eagle.
lion.
Lion and
Eagle,
ox.
bull.
And these are all in the heavenly realm, correct?
Well, it's coming out of the heavenly realm.
Okay, and this is something that's in the heavenly realm, coming out of the heavenly realm, and these were created animals that were created in Genesis here for the earth. So were these animals that God created to live on the earth then?
No.
No, I mean, no, I know he didn't create this thing to live on the earth, but what I'm saying is the faces of these animals are animals we have here now. I don't know, it's just, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but these animals were in God's thought processes. I don't know. Do what?
Is there?
Is there a connection to these animals that we have here on the
Well,
earth. You know
So,
what I'm trying to say?
well, okay, so this gets us into definitely a bunny trail theologically, okay?
Okay.
So, but it's okay. So I believe that everything, because one of the last Torah portion dealt with this thing of sevens, right? And we're in an unclean world, like a leper, we're in an unclean world for a period of 7, right? And so we're in this period of
That is
7.
low.
But before this period of 7, we had the period of 7 for the creation, correct?
Yes,
All right. So in the period of creation, when it starts, it comes off, there's
I'm still
chaos,
listening.
okay? So there's chaos, and then order's created. And at the end of the 7-day creation story, there's chaos at the end because of Adam and Satan, and the eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And then he reestablishes order, okay? And then we read in scripture in the book of John that there's a war of Magog and Gog at the end, and then he comes and reestablishes order again, right? Okay, so once he reestablished orders, the great white throne judgment, we're all living in the New Jerusalem, okay? That's not the end of it. It's a period of 7. It's a cycle of 7 going to go back again. And this is important, Betty, that as we always see these things, God does things in blocks of 7, okay? And always at the end of that block of 7, there's going to be some chaos that creates disorder, and then God is going to take back control of this, okay? So in my opinion, these cherubs and these seraphim have been created way before this stuff, because this is stuff out of the heavenly realm. They've been
Right.
around. They've been around a lot longer than anything that because the Bible gives us a window to 3 7 periods: creation, our period now, and then at the New Jerusalem it begins. It doesn't tell us much after New Jerusalem, but we know when the New Jerusalem comes down, there's a beginning of another cycle, right? It alludes to a period prior to that, okay? Time is not important here. It's not important. In other words, the rotation of the earth around the sun, that time period is not what we're talking about. God communicates to us based on our understanding, but he tells us it's going to be in a block of 7. All right. So before he created the earth, all right, there seems to be chaos on the earth. There's something. He hovers over the waters. Now, there's theologically, some people argue that none of this exists, but there's an interesting statement that said the day that he puts the bodies in there, he puts them into place. Okay. He doesn't say he creates them. He says he puts them into place.
Where is that, honey? Your reference.
When he puts the planets and the stars, he allocates them. He says he puts them into place. There's
That's
no
in
mention.
Job. That's in Job, correct?
No, it's in Genesis.
Okay.
So, look, I don't buy into the earth being billions and billions of years. I think that's just a lie. Okay. And I don't buy into it, that there was any relevance to earth as far as we need to know prior to creation. There's no relevance for us. Okay. In other words, it's not relevant to salvation and our understanding of God and how he does it. But if we have these cycles of 7 and he's introducing them to us creatures here in Ezekiel, right? He's telling us about it. These creatures are outside of time, and they're about periods outside of time. So that means they had purpose, and they were created beforehand for a specific purpose. And we don't know when that was, and we'll probably never know. Maybe it's not important, but I will say, keep in mind that these are seraphims and cherubims are heavenly realm creatures, and they were not created for the earth. The earth was created for man, right? And so the things that we know, and getting back to what Betty says, the eagle, the lion, the ox, creatures here on earth, Yeah, maybe there were images of it. And what's the purpose of an eagle? It's the top of the food chain. The lion, top of the food chain. All right, the bull, it serves a purpose on the top of its chain of clean animals. And the human is the top of the chain completely. So these are all creatures at the top of the chain here on earth, but their images are outside of time. So
Maybe
I
it's
think,
also sorry. Maybe
Go
it's
ahead.
also a reference to Yeshua is called the Lion of Judah, correct? The spirit of the Ruach is the dove or an eagle that soars. Yehovah, bull
so
is
the
usually
spirit would not be an eagle.
Paleo-Hebrew.
The spirit would not be an eagle. Okay, so there's an example of the spirit being compared to a dove, right? But what's the first thing released from the ark? No, what if Noah first release?
The dove.
Dove.
The raven.
A
Oh,
raven,
the raven.
clean, an
Yeah,
unclean
right.
animal, right? Then he
Unclean.
releases a dove, a clean animal, all right? And so the dove hovers over the waters and finds order, finds life. In the beginning, the Spirit of God hovers over the water and creates order. So there's these images he's bringing these two images to kind of teach us something. So to answer Betty's question is, I believe the cherubims are outside of time, or were created outside of time and outside of our knowledge of time. And it's a 7-day creation, and the story of Genesis of that 7-day creation applies to this earth, okay? And the things that go into this earth. So the cherubims, which would be outside of time, and their application is outside of that 7-day creation and the current 7,000 years we're in right now. Does that make sense?
Sort of, but I think my question was, well, let's don't move on. Let's move on from there, because that's just going to go off on another bunny trail. So,
Okay, all right. What verse are we get in 25, right?
25.
Yes.
yeah.
We're going into 26 now.
Okay, Paul, can you read 26 through the end of the chapter?
Above the expanse over their heads was something like a throne, resembling as sapphire stone. Above the shape of the throne was a figure of a human appearance, from what appeared as his waist upward.
All right, stop right there. Stop right there, Paul. And above the expanse over the heads, there was a likeness of a throne in appearance like sapphire, and seated above the likeness of the throne was a likeness of a human appearance. Where do we see something like this being introduced? Very similar prior to.
That isn't that the feet of iron, the legs of, or
No.
the feet of clay, legs of iron.
No.
You're talking about the Nebuchadnezzar thing?
Yeah,
what you're
he's talking about the
Yeah.
king of Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a throne and sapphire and the likeness of a throne, a human appearance. Where do we find that?
Breastplate, correct? Or in the temple.
Oh, you're jumping
We're
around.
guessing. We're doing good guessing.
No, you're talking about before Ezekiel, right?
For the Ezekiel.
Oh, is it Isaiah?
Nope.
Nope.
Matt, help us out, Matt. Where
I was thinking Revelation, but I mean, you mentioned it was before Ezekiel, then I'm not sure.
Okay,
how about in the book of Exodus? Where do we see this in the book of Exodus?
ask your question again.
Where do we see something very similar description of this prior to Ezekiel, specifically in the book of Exodus, with some of these similar imagery going on? Before the 10 commandments were given, during the covenantal meal, when they go up, right?
Yeah.
And when Joshua goes up, there is a highway of sapphire that leads to the throne.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
You're
Moses asked to see the face of God. He's denied that. He sees the robe or the train of the Father on a throne. Okay. He sees a sapphire. He sees the robe and the train, the backside of the Father. So we read here, Paul just reads, and above the expanse over their heads, there was a throne. Okay. It looked like a throne. It smelled like a throne. It was a throne. And in appearance like sapphire, there was a sapphire that that laid the pavement for this throne. And seated above the likeness of a throne was a likeness of human appearance, which means what's the whole point? Well, we've been talking about since Ezekiel 1:1. This is a mobile throne.
Mobile throne.
It's a mobile throne. This is the Ark of the Covenant coming down in a very sophisticated way, not made by the hands of the sons of Aaron, but made by the hands of the heavenly realm. Okay.
I think that's what I heard Rod say earlier. It had to do with the Ark of the Covenant. So that's good. Yeah.
So, and what's fascinating about it is when you start seeing these patterns repeated over and over and over through scripture, you begin to draw an understanding of how God projects his power on earth. Okay. This is a projection of power onto the earth. And so where I want to get it, where else do we see a projection of power taking place? Let's go to Paul, since you're still reading, go to Matthew 24.
Verse.
Matthew 24, go to verse 20, start in 26 and go through 31.
So if they say to you, look, he is in the wilderness, do not go out, or look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. But just as lightning comes from the east and flashes as far as the west, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man. For whoever the carcass is, for wherever the carcass is, there the vultures will gather. But immediately after the trouble of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth, all the tribes of the land will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. He will send out his angels with their great shofar, and they will gather together his chosen from the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the other.
All right, well, let's just put it to you this way. In Ezekiel 1:1, he shows up and he's projecting power, but it's limited power. Adonai Sabaoth is projecting limited power, but in this time, Matthew 24, he's projecting all of his power. His whole army will show up with him. So if he's going to show up and lightning's going to come and flashing and all the sight that we're seeing in Ezekiel, he's going to come on this mobile throne. Very similar. Cherubims will be his bodyguards. Angels will be stretching out, going to the four corners. Messengers will be coming to and fro. It'll be from this mobile throne. So you can see Ezekiel gets a little glimpse of what we're going to see in the return of the Lord. He gets a tiny glimpse, and it's so overwhelming to him. It blows his mind. He's barely able to capture the words to say this. But for our day, we won't even be able to verbalize it. We'll just be lucky to be alive on the day of the Lord when he projects the same power when he comes in that same mobile throne. Where else is it in Thessalonians? He talks about him coming in the air.
Yeah, we just read that today, didn't we, Matt?
What is it? 1 Thessalonians chapter 4.
Yes.
Go ahead and read that again. Will you read that one?
4:3.
Then are you talking
yeah,
about
so it says,
being caught up?
yeah, that's right. So it says,
What verse?
for this we tell you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord shall in no way precede those who are asleep. For the Lord himself shall come down from heaven with a commanding shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the blast of God's shofar. And the dead in Messiah shall rise first. Then we who are alive, who are left behind, will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore, encourage one another with these words.
There you go. All right. So there's other places that I think there's a place in Isaiah that talks about it as well. But the bottom line here is before Paul finishes, the bottom line is when you see this mobile throne, God is projecting as captain of the army or the Messiah. Okay, so let me go back to my point here. The one he sees appearing on this, in my opinion, is the one we're going to see begin to address him in chapter 2. Let me go there real quick. Come on.
Chapter 2, Ezekiel.
Yeah, but it doesn't, I don't know why. It doesn't say it there. Let me go find another place.
What are you looking for?
It says the word of the Lord.
The word of the Lord what?
The word of the Lord comes to Ezekiel. The word, when it says,
Oh.
The beginning of the 13th year, I was among the exiled, and I saw the vision. So this is really looking, and the voice from above, the expanse over their heads when they stood still. Would that be it?
yeah, so this voice that he's going to hear is going to be the logos, the debar, the word of the Lord. Okay, that is the Messiah. Yeshua is he is Adonai Savod. He is the captain of the army. So the one who is dealing with Israel will always be the Messiah. Before he was named Yeshua, he was the word of the Lord. He was the angel of the Lord. He was the captain of the army. Different terminology used here. But what's
Ezekiel
important is,
6:1.
thank you, Ezekiel 6:1. All right, go ahead and read that.
The word of the Lord came. Ezekiel 6:1. Oh, no, come on. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face towards the mountain of Israel and prophesy against them, and
Okay.
say, you mountains.
That's good. That's good. All right. So keep in mind, I want you guys to frame or take a snapshot. This throne, who's on the throne, is the word of the Lord. Okay, that who's occupying this throne. The Father has sent the Son to warn the 10 tribes about what's coming to them. Okay, that's what I want you to capture for the rest of the 47 chapters. We're going to go in there. The Father has dispatched the Son, and Ezekiel is going to be the conduit, the priest that's going to give the message to the 10 tribes and to all of Israel about what's coming. All right. So what he's doing, he's basically trying to capture for his audience. Don't play around. The one who came to me is much greater than you can possibly imagine, and he's going to bring doom upon us if we don't repent. If something doesn't change, we're in trouble. And so for him to start saying this, and I want you, Paul, I want you to start again and read 26 through the end of the chapter. Go ahead and read it right now.
Above the expanse over the heads was something like a throne, resembling a sapphire stone. Above the shape of the throne was a figure of human appearance. From what appeared as his waist upward, I saw a glowing metal looking like a fire encased in the frame. From what was like his waist down, I saw the appearance of fire radiating around him. Like the appearance of a rainbow in a cloud of a rainy day, so was the appearance of the radiancy. It was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of Adonai. I saw it, fell upon my face, and heard the voice of the one who was speaking.
Yeah, I mean, this is terrifying. Okay, if you notice the description here of the one who had a human-like appearance, it's very similar to how when we covered Daniel, did he not describe him in a very similar manner?
Mm-hmm.
And in book of Revelations, when John describes it, does he not describe him in a very similar manner? Okay, so we have consistency in Daniel, Ezekiel, and Revelations. We have consistency on how the Messiah is described. We have consistency in his appearance, and even when he shows the thrones being set up in chapter 7 of Daniel, we see a very similar consistency in the way he's being described. So when you read this, as we go through all these chapters, know who's got basically Ezekiel's attention. It's the Messiah. And he's the one bringing the word from the Father. And he didn't rely on just any messenger to bring this message. The key. He wasn't going to just use a Gabriel or a Michael. It was the Messiah, the Son of God himself, that has to bring this message. So I would ask the question, how important is the book of Ezekiel if the very Messiah, the very Son of God, brings the message versus just Gabriel or Michael?
Extremely.
All right. Very
Obviously, it's a
different.
pay attention to.
Yes, very different than the other ways he's done in the past. So as we go into chapter 2, what time is it? 4:36. It's a short chapter. Who hasn't read yet? Okay, I'll read this. And he said to me, the one who was above the span, the glory of the Lord, said to, Son of man, stand on your feet, and I will speak with you. And he spoke to me, and the Spirit entered into me and set me up on my feet, and I heard him speaking to me. And he said to me, Son of man, I send you to the people of Israel. Okay, wait a minute. Let me see. Who says to the people of Israel there?
Mine says, send you to Bnei Israel.
Mine says that too.
Okay.
People, Son of Man, I send you to the people of Israel. That's being said by the messenger.
All right, messenger. What other translations do we have?
Mine says to the sons of Israel, to a rebellious people.
Okay. All right.
I have the Holman. What verse are you talking about?
And he
3.
said to me, Son of man, I send you to. Verse 3.
Oh, verse 3. I sent you to the rebellious nations. I'm sending you to the Israelites and to the rebellious nations.
Really?
All right.
I send you. Okay.
All right. So let me go ahead and read it because I think we need it. We'll hone in on this later. Okay. He said to me, Son of man, I'm sending you to people of Israel, to nations of rebels who have rebelled against me. They and their fathers have transgressed against me to this very day. The descendants also are impotent and stubborn. I send you to them, and you shall say to them, Thus says the Lord God, and whether they hear or refuse to hear, for they are a rebellious house, that's a very key word there, they will know that a prophet has been among them. And you, Son of man, do not be afraid of them, nor be afraid of their words, though briars and thorns are with you, and you sit on scorpions. Be not afraid of their words, nor be dismayed of their looks, for they are a rebellious house. And you shall speak to my words to them, whether they hear or refuse to hear, for they are a rebellious house. But you, Son of man, hear what I say to you. Be not rebellious like the rebellious house. Open your mouth and eat what I give you. And when I looked, behold, a hand was stretched out to me, and behold, a scroll of a book was in it. And he spread it before me, and it had writing on the front and on the back, and there were written on it words, lamentations and mournings and woes. 3 things: lamentations, mournings, and woes. Okay. All 3 have different meanings. So before we get to next week, I want definitions of all 3: lamentations, mournings, and woes, and how they apply. And the second thing, I want you to be able to define who the rebellious house is.
Southern Kingdom.
Okay.
No.
We'll talk about it next week. All right. So any questions? Let's cover what we covered today.
Yeah, I guess I have one question.
Yeah.
Why do you think that a vision such as this was given to Ezekiel? I mean, we have lots of prophets, minor prophets, major prophets, but Ezekiel is it because maybe he's a priest?
Yeah. Well,
He's from a priestly line.
yeah. So this is interesting question. So Joseph Good used to say that all prophets were priests. And I would say that's not true. Okay. Not all prophets are priests. A lot of them are. Ezekiel, Elijah and Elisha were from the 10 tribes, right? And so they could not have been Levites. And you also see from the tribe of Judah, Amos is a shepherd, so he is not a priest.
Mm.
You see Hosea, who's an advisor to the 10 tribes in the royal house, Jeroboam II. He is not a priest, okay? But when a priest is used, not just any priest, a descendant of Aaron, there has to be things that are specific to the house of God. You got to know it. He's going to be talking about the house of God. He's going to talk about specifics about it. And so I would go back and say, we got John, the Revelator, revealing stuff about the house of God. I don't know, the scripture doesn't tell us what tribe John is from, but I would say that John is a Levite, just like Ezekiel is, because they are addressing things that specifically have to do with the temple of God. So I think when you're dealing with the temple of God, you're going to have a priest speaking to the people.
Well,
Well, that was kind of where I was thinking too. Okay, that's my question.
I mean, here's an example. Look at Hosea, for example. Hosea doesn't deal with the temple at all, right? He's dealing with repentance. He's dealing with the scattering. He deals with this woman, a prostitute, who's, he's dealing with this imagery, but the stuff he deals with is not dealing with the temple of God. Okay. First of all, his audience doesn't even know about the temple of God because they live in another kingdom that doesn't even go to that temple anymore. So he doesn't address that. Amos doesn't either. So, but Ezekiel does, and he's very familiar with it. Very familiar with it.
Right.
And I was thinking, Robert, another question we take for granted, I always did anyway, that he was speaking to the captives in Babylon, that were from Judah. But it's very specific that he was sent to the 10 tribes.
Yeah.
So they've been up there a long time. And
yeah, how many years? So if this was a 605 exile, how many years have they been there?
Did they go there in 590 something?
No, in 720. So there's 120 years.
Before then, okay.
Yeah, and this is a
So
very
a generation.
interesting number. Yeah, it's a very interesting number of 120 years, right? 120
One
years
generation
goes
would
by, and
pass.
then a priest shows up to exiles. 120 years, Noah prophesied. So we're going to be 120 jubilees before the return of the Messiah. So this 120 is very interesting here because there's been 120 years since the bulk of these have been exiled. And so he shows up 120 years later for lamentations, mournings, and woes, which you guys are going to discover that over the next week. All right. Any other questions? This is pretty good.
Yeah, I like what Raj said about the third generation, because the second generation heard from the first generation these things. But by the time the third generation, they pretty much lost, all even their interest in their root. So they were really in need of just a reminder who they were.
Yeah.
So what does it mean when in the first verse, it says now it came about in the 30th year on the 5th day? When it says 30th year, is that 30th year of exile? This is
30th year exile of him.
Of him.
Yes.
Okay.
And keep in mind, it's the Babylonians' first exile. Daniel gets taken up in the first exile, but he gets taken into Babylon, right?
Okay.
And so this is why some people think Ezekiel actually got taken in 597 versus 605, because 605 clearly Daniel was taken to Babylon. So 7 years later did he get taken? That's the question.
Oh.
So I there's no way to prove. I can't prove when he showed up at the Kabar River, but it's either 605 or 597. It's one of the two.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's stop the recording.